Hello and welcome to Super Switch Headz, the premier Nintendo podcast on all of the internet. My name is Patrick Knisley.
My name is Matthew Stoner.
My name is David Howe, and boy, oh boy, we got a very special guest this evening. Our guest is Celeste Roberts from another Zelda podcast. Welcome to the show. Celeste, thank you for being on today.
And thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Awesome. Celeste, you are here to talk with us today about lore in video games. We're going to do a deep dive into that. And there's a lot of news as well and rumors going around about Nintendo Direct rumors. We got that English Q&A translation, bunch of next-gen Xbox news, and some upsetting news out of the fighting game community and Smash community that we'll have to talk about. But before we get into all of that, everybody doing all right? How's everybody doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Not too bad. To what you're saying over the news, it's like we're in like hype. It feels like E3 again because there's so much speculation happening right now, and like it makes me excited. So it's a nice distraction from the real world.
I've been having a great week.
Yeah.
I've been rewatching Breaking Bad, so I'm all torqued up all the time, like I'm on meth or something. So it's like I'm ready to go, baby. Let's do this pod.
How about you, Celeste? You doing okay?
Oh yeah, it's a really good week. I can't complain.
Oh, good. Awesome. Well, last week we did an episode on DLC. That was episode 72. And we got some comments on our Discord. Matt, our friend Matt, also known as Steve Irwin on Discord, told us that the DLC for Zelda Breath of the Wild had the best shrines in the game. And that is true. I agree. I agree at least. And Emma on our Discord also mentioned that she's been playing Master Mode, which is also part of the DLC. And then over on Facebook, our friend Daniel Murphy, DCD, also commented and talked about Final Fantasy 15 DLC and how Nintendo's generally pretty good with DLC and all that kind of stuff. A couple more on YouTube. Victor Oliveira, glad to have you back.
2 shout outs in a row, baby.
Yeah, that's right. And KG and Keeps Gaming. We got to mention you, and also thanks for sending Todd Keeps Gaming over our way. Hello, Todd. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah. Do you think they're brothers? Ant Keeps Gaming and Todd Keeps Gaming.
Todd does his moderates his streams and stuff, I believe, and runs his Discord and stuff
like a good brother would.
I just want all the Keeps Gaming siblings to listen to Super Switch Headz.
This is Mr. and Mrs. Keeps Gaming.
So if you're out there listening, we'd love to hear from you. We love reviews. We love comments, all that kind of stuff. Share our podcast. And we're going to get into the news and the rumors because we got a lot to get through. So this has been going around recently. There are a lot of July Nintendo Direct rumors happening, and we give folks out there the background if you don't already have it. There's an individual known as Kelios, that's how I'm going to say it, on Twitter, who I believe is French, if I'm not mistaken. And they have correctly leaked, I believe, the Direct Mini date that we had back in, was it April? And they are saying there's going to be one in July, and then more specifically, recently, July 20th has been specifically, which is a Monday, which is strange. And then John Harker, another known leaker on Reset Era, also kind of had heard that there is a Direct, but didn't have said that they didn't know that if it was a lock yet. So what do y'all think? Do you think this is true?
I would love for this Direct to be on the 20th because that would mean that we'd be able to talk about it when we record on Tuesday. But yeah, I mean, obviously everybody wants a Direct. We all kind of assumed that they'd be holding whatever they would be doing for E3 until their kind of scheduled Direct time in September. And we'd heard from Jeff Grubb in the past that there wouldn't be any Nintendo Direct. So now we're kind of getting conflicting information, but yeah, I mean, definitely keep your eyes peeled. It would make sense as well because it would be that Monday would be after the Friday that Paper Mario comes out. So it's kind of giving people the weekend to play the game before we get new announcements about future games.
I also think we're going to get a direct. Usually I'm the person who would be a denier. I'm a direct denier all day long and a Switch Pro denier all day long. But we're just we're in this season of video game announcements and past E3 enough time to where, Nintendo's probably had enough time to send all their employees home to work on whatever they're doing for E3. And I think that presentation, if it were scheduled in June, which was for E3 time, makes sense to have it be delayed a month to be July, and also to strategically to hit the video game, fandom before the big Xbox announcement, because usually Xbox might be the last one,
right?
Typically at E3.
Yeah, it would be the same week as the Xbox announcement if those other Jeff Grubb rumors are to be believed, and we'll get into those pretty soon as well.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think it's quite possible. I think it is like conflicting info, like you said, based on what we've heard. But maybe this will be a Nintendo focused direct, because we heard specifically that they told all their partners to make their own announcements and not wait for them. But maybe there will still be some third party stuff if it does happen. I don't know. Yeah.
What we need to know from a Nintendo Direct anyway is what Nintendo themselves are going to be doing for the rest of the year. You know what I mean? Like, we already know a lot of what the third parties are going to be doing for the rest of the year. I mean, we're still waiting on Doom Eternal, for Christ's sake. So it's like, we just need to know. I mean, we've been talking about the Mario remaster pack that's going to be coming, but that hasn't been officially announced. So something's got to get out there. Yeah. Hopefully we see whatever standees they were going to have up on the E3 show floor in this video as well.
And then one thing that could be in a direct, I suppose, is the Breath of the Wild sequel. And there was a kind of funny situation that happened where some Spanish voice actors did a podcast in Spanish. And there was some speculation, we can say, that or maybe some mistranslations that got spread around the internet, where it was indicated that that these voice actors said that they were done with recording the sequel, but that's not apparently what they actually said. This was called Un Café con Nintendo is the name of the podcast. And they have had to put out statements and stuff. They're like, hey, everybody, slow down. We didn't say that.
Was it just a translation misunderstanding of we're done recording, but what they really meant was we're done recording for the week or for the month?
They never really said that they were done recording in it, but I've read some translations and basically from multiple people. And what it sounds like they were saying is yeah, we record when we were recording Breath of the Wild 1. And then they're like, oh, but we can't say if we've finished recording or even started recording Breath of the Wild 2 yet. And then they both laugh and they realize that they probably shouldn't be talking about what they're talking about. You know what I mean? So it's it's definitely the article that spread this was certainly clickbait. And saying hey, they finished and everything. I think people just want to hear that because when you're recording the localization, that generally means the game is almost done, right? But I think they're probably recording based on the nervousness of the people on the podcast.
Yeah, I think they were. It's what David said. They were just kind of skirting around the issue, and everybody took that to mean something because we're desperate for news about this game. We really want to hear about it.
If anything, this proves that we want news so bad that we'll just create it out of thin air.
There you go. And I think as people who do a podcast, I always want us to do a good job of not just parroting other things like this too, actually do a little digging in. So at least thankfully that happened by other people first before it came around to us. But
yeah, we're not journalists, but neither is the site that posted this article. Won't name names.
We got new Japanese physical software sales information from Famitsu, and Animal Crossing surpassed 5 million physical copies sold in Japan, is the number one selling game again, back at it after a week off. Crazy, y'all. I don't know what else to say. We've talked about it so much.
I think that's all there is to say.
That's all there is to say. Finally got the English translation out of the investor meeting. And I think for me, at least, this was cool. There's nothing huge in particular that we didn't talk about that already wasn't kind of translated by other people. But I think it's just nice to see the context. And also this may always be the case, but like the investors this time around, I feel like they were asking some hard hitting questions, like the one where they had to apologize for Joy-Con drift was one of those.
Were any of the investors like, why do you keep adding babies as doctors in Dr. Mario World?
No, but they were like, why aren't you able to meet the demand? Why are people, I'm concerned that there's this lawsuit and all that kind of stuff. Is like, man, they're asking some good questions. Thanks, investors.
Capitalism working.
Yeah. Jump rope challenge got a free update. I was actually going to try to test this out before we recorded, but I didn't get around to it. They added a bunch of like Nintendo costumes. You can jump rope as a Samus bunny and a Luigi bunny now.
The Link costume has like space for the rabbit's ears inside the hood, which I thought was really cute.
Very cute.
I didn't think this game would be getting free DLC, but here we are.
Yeah, here we are.
That's way more DLC than we got for Mario Party.
Yeah, that's true.
Way more.
Infinitely more DLC for Jump Rope Challenge than Super Mario Party.
We don't know if we'll get a Nintendo Direct this month or not, but we do know that we're getting the Devolver Direct. They announced that that's definitely happening on July 11th. So we look forward to that and hearing our friends at Devolver talk about whatever games they are going to be releasing and that kind of thing.
Yeah, very much looking forward to that.
This is on a Saturday, which means I'm going to pop over to that Discord and hop into that voice channel and hope that you do the same in our Super Switch Headz Discord and join us as we gossip about all the crazy lore and Devolver
all the fake blood. And then Xbox announced that they're having a demo event as part of the nebulous summer game fest that is going on between Tuesday, July 21st and Monday, July 27th. David, this is what you were talking about on our E3 episode. There is a remote demo event that they're putting on. Through the Xbox console, you can play these demos for a week, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's what you were talking about, right? Like when we had
sure. Yeah. If you're going to be canceling physical trade shows and events where fans would be able to play the demos, it definitely makes sense to make them available during that time. If not just as a stopgap, if E3 comes back, we'll see if they continue to do this. I think they should. Obviously you get a lot out of being there, but if you can stay home, stream the presentations and then play the demos, I think that's great for everybody. And it only gets people more hyped up about these games.
And then that same week, they announced that they're having the Xbox Games Showcase, July 23rd. I imagine that is when we will also hear some more of these details about the Lockhart, as it's been called. But I don't know. It's called the Games Showcase, so maybe it'll just be games.
I'm stoked for this.
Yeah.
I think I was saying in our Discord that this could really make or break Microsoft as they release their new hardware this year, depending on what they come out with. Because people are speculating that it could be the biggest Microsoft announcement. And that level of hype gets me excited, but it also scares the shit out of me because maybe Halo Infinite will be bad.
We'll see. Halo rumors.
And I want it to be so good.
Yeah. There's some crazy Halo rumors, right? That it's kind of going to break that series open and stuff.
Yeah. There's rumors that it might be an adventure game.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I mean, I think this is kind of this is Microsoft's game to lose at this point for launch. Because if Halo Infinite truly is going to launch with the Xbox Series X, then I mean, what does Sony have? Sony has Spider-Man Miles Morales, which is not really a full sequel to Spider-Man. So it's really, as long as they stick the launch here, I think that they could do really, really well this November or whenever the consoles eventually come out. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what they've been cooking up with a lot of those first party development studios that they bought up last year or in the year before.
Yeah, no, there's a feisty rumor that Microsoft might buy the games in the Warner Brothers game catalog with like Batman.
I heard about that.
And Mortal Kombat, NetherRealm Studios. So
maybe we'll get an announcement then.
Yeah.
More games for Game Pass.
Hype season. And
Ubisoft has an event scheduled as well for July 12th. And as I understand it, you can get a free copy of Watch Dogs 2 or something. Is that right?
Yeah, if you install Ubiplay or whatever the fucking launcher is called. Yeah.
And I guess they'll be showing off Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which you could already go see because that game leaked. A lot of footage of it already is leaked. And then I think this is interesting coming off of our DLC episode where we kind of talked about how games have been stuck at $60 for a long time. There have been some listings for 2K games that show them at $70. And in particular, like the NBA 2K and FIFA games and stuff like that look like they will be $70. So maybe video games are finally going to go up in price for next gen or period or what have you.
So the game series that puts slot machines and paid advertisements into their games is going to also charge an extra $10 for the games. Man, I wish I'd heard this from anybody other than 2K. You know what I mean? Because it's like, you better mitigate the price of some of that DLC, you know? Yeah. I heard a whole discussion about this online recently, just talking about the price increase. And it's like, it's not like they're doing anything different to develop these games for this generation. You know what I mean? It's like using all the same framework. It's using the same engines and stuff like that. They just kind of arbitrarily decided like, oh shit, we didn't raise it last generation. We better raise it this generation. So we'll see. I'd love to see some mitigation of DLC.
And one way that might happen is the UK is moving forward potentially on some loot box regulations over there. I don't pretend to know how the UK British Parliament works, but the House of Lords Gambling Committee has instituted a recommendation.
That sounds like a Dishonored DLC, what you just said.
The House of Lords Gambling Committee has suggested that they should classify loot boxes as gambling, which would obviously impact the industry, and it probably should be classified as gambling or limited or something.
It absolutely should be.
And now it's time for us to get into some of that upsetting news. Evo, the event Evo it started with some allegations coming out against Joey Quellar, I think is how you say his name, who was one of the big names over at Evo, like the president of Evo, who has stepped down and in particular preying on young children or teenagers or what have you. There's been a lot of allegations. And so a bunch of people backed out of supporting Evo, the games, like you were talking about NetherRealm, and some of the other
Capcom backed out.
Capcom. Yeah. They pulled out, and Evo sort of just ended up getting canceled because of all that. And then this has been happening. We talked about this last week. There's been a lot of sexual misconduct allegations and things coming to light in the gaming industry at large. And then it really hit the Super Smash Brothers competitive community this past week.
That's putting it lightly, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A number of top players had allegations come out against them, and a lot of them admitted to them of various stripes across the board. And I mean, like 15 or so different individuals?
It's more than a dozen. It might even be closer to 20, and stuff is still consistently coming out since, I guess the first one that I heard about was Nairo. Who,
that's sort of the biggest one.
Right. Had a, admitted to a relationship with Captain Zach, who's another Smash player who was underage at the time. And then Captain Zach is the one who came forward and with these allegations and receipts and all this kind of stuff. Apparently he had been paid to keep quiet about it, which is disturbing.
Yes.
But then since then, you've got if you look at basically the top 3 of like any Smash Ultimate tournament for the past 3 years, it's like everybody in the top 3 that has been indicted.
Well, not Tweaker, MK Leo, who were
right. Excuse me, not Tweaker,
right?
MK, but I'm talking. You look at certain tournaments, right?
Yeah.
Because
Gotcha.
I mean, Zero, who is arguably the greatest Smash player, at least Smash Ultimate player in the world, straight up admitted to grooming and sending messages to minors, soliciting nudes and stuff like that. Who's subsequently been deleting all his social media, and I think has been dropped by Facebook Gaming, hopefully at this point. But yeah, it's been an absolute just dumpster fire of a news week as far as the competitive Smash scene is concerned.
So obviously, anybody who's been a victim of that's who's most important on this, right? Like, it's terrible for anybody who has been preyed upon or what have you.
The reality of the situation with the Smash community in particular is that, you've got a bunch of, mid to late 20s men, for the most part, going to out of state tournaments, staying in hotels with people of all different ages, boys and girls and teens, and there just hasn't been a lot of oversight. And it's like, I mean, this is kind of, it's also like, I mean, if you're a predator, like this is like, it's like a breeding ground for it. You know what I mean? It's like, you can't really ask for like everything to line up like that more than it has. And I think it's this like real ugly truth has finally come to light. And, there's like definitely a culling going on right now, which is very much needed. And the Smash community like needs like a hard refresh with a proper code of conduct and, restrictions on multi-day tournaments. You know what I mean? Guardians need to be, parental guardians and age restrictions. Like they just need to figure out a bunch of shit because it's just like not sustainable the way it is.
I think, we've seen this kind of stuff in other communities and say the comedy community or what have you, similar kinds of issues. And I think we live in Texas. And I think about this too, like it's easy to like want to say that this is isolated, but this isn't everything. And anything where they're like I think about football and just like how many stories have come out about high school and college football, which is such a big deal. And I don't know, man, it's just messy. And I think all of this is just showing how much this is everywhere. And it's good that it's coming to light, but it's distressing to hear about.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, I think it's distressing because you hear this you see it in Hollywood, and then you see it in the music industry, and then you see it in sports, and like it's getting closer to the home and to like my own interest, the gaming community, with gamers who are sometimes a subculture of theirs for themselves. It's like a safe space where gamers can be who they are and enjoy what they like, and even those environments where a person feels safe are, can become not a safe space anymore very quickly because of assholes and predators.
And Celeste, I'd love to hear from you. We're three dudes talking, and one thing I've learned from being married is that a lot of women have to deal with a lot of stuff. And do you have anything to add or to share about this? Or
I've been fortunate. I don't know if it's because I don't really participate in a lot of online gaming, but so far, not trying to jinx myself, but so far, I've. I'm going to say that, and before you know it, I'm going to get all kind of lewd messages.
We've got a non-toxic fan base. Don't worry.
No, I know. It's I've been pretty naive to it, and it's something not just in the gaming community, but I live in a predominantly Catholic area, and I attended Catholic school. I had no idea. I don't think who knows what was going on while I was there. Not in my world, not in my little bubble. I never experienced anything. And I remember in 10th grade, one of my friends told me that her brother had done some things to her. And that was the first time something like that had ever come into my mind. Like I could not fathom it. I was very fortunate to not have experienced that. I haven't really received any lewd or uncomfortable messages in my lifetime, maybe a few in college from some drunk dudes. And I kind of wish that I had the personality I have now. When I was very timid back then. Your wife might be able to attest to this. A lot of women are conditioned to be people pleasers, to be accommodating, and men can absolutely be that way too. Very, very sweet, very much doormats. But I think it stems from just years, and I've seen it with older women in my family. Just don't say anything about minor inconveniences. Don't be honest about your feelings. And I'm happy that these things are coming to light. On the flip side, I do, my concern is that if someone is just angry at somebody, I kind of tread with caution for men or women. I would hope that someone is not ever falsely accused among these waves.
That's happened in this situation already. Mewtwo King, who's another big streamer, had allegations come out against him, and he had to share like deeply personal secrets that he's kept to himself to vindicate him from some of these claims. And so it's like, you're right, Celeste. It's like it's so difficult to tread, but I guess you just have to
it's something, and I'm nervous to say that because I don't want anybody to lash out at me and say, you don't believe all people. I worry about even people like you, if somebody's just angry with you or upset with you or something. So I'm so happy that these things are coming to light, and I hope that they're given their due diligence and investigations.
Well, it shouldn't be too hard from the from the investigative side. I mean, it's actually quite surprised like how many of the people who were accused of this like straight up went on Twitter and admitted to felonious acts. You know what I mean? It's like it kind of shows like how
that's surprising.
It shows how isolated and in this bubble and in this kind of like, I don't think that any of them truly realized the gravity of what was really happening there. And that's another part of the problem, right? Is that it was like such this insulated group where all this stuff was happening and everybody kind of thought they were untouchable. And even when trying to do the right thing and say the right thing, they're basically, indicting themselves from a law perspective, which is none of them consulted a lawyer before they went on Twitlonger and started posting this stuff.
It
seems that way. So it's like, we'll see how it shakes out. But I mean, either way, the Smash scene the competitive Smash scene has been increasingly toxic over the years. And this was needed not just for this issue in particular, but like, I think the important thing right now is, you're right, Celeste. It's like, obviously you need to look at it from as many sides as you can. You can't just immediately side with, everybody who says something right away. But I think my takeaway that I've seen from all this is like, you have to listen to people and you have to listen to them when they come forward about this kind of stuff, because it takes major, major bravery in order to do so.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And then once it's out and you've listened, that's when you really have to look at all sides and view everything. But I mean, it makes it a lot easier when the people who are perpetrating these things admit it. I'll say that.
Admit it.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I really hope this gives people the courage to come forward, especially younger people. I mean, even as an adult, it's terrifying, especially if you have a lot to lose or somebody threatens you. I mean, look at Elizabeth Smart, the man who kidnapped her, threatened to kill her family if she said anything. That's why whenever I hear people say, well, why did they wait 5 years? Why did they wait a decade? Especially when they're children.
Yeah.
I mean, try to think back to when you were a kid, how terrifying and intimidating adults were, or how naive, I don't want to say gullible, but naive and trusting you are as a child. You think everybody has your best interest at heart. So I am very happy that people have that courage now, and I hope they continue to. And I really hope justice is served.
And I hope we as like a species can figure this out, because I feel like this is like, it's easy to point to some of these communities where this is happening and be like, oh, it's because it's Smash. And I think there are certain things like you were talking about, David, but I also think like this is, like you said, in Hollywood and it's everywhere. And so like, we have some systemic problems, and this is beyond the scope of this podcast. So I don't want to, like we could talk about cancel culture and all kinds of stuff, and there's lots of depth and things worthy of discussion. But man, I don't know. I'm rambling now. I'll stop.
To your point, Patrick, I think what's important for us as we are a video game podcast. This news, as it is, it's the reality that's affecting, our fans and our listeners and the stuff that we enjoy, which is video games, which is why we really want to spend some time talking about it, because it is affecting most of us.
Just to wrap up for me, I'd just say that, in addition to, people coming forward and how important that is when they've been wronged in the past, regardless of how much time has passed, like that's super important. But even more important, I think, is, if you see something, you got to say something, because it's like, all of this was happening with a lot of people that lived in the same house, you know what I mean? And I'm sure that a lot more people knew about what was going on than came forward and said anything, even if they themselves didn't do anything, and I think the takeaway here for me is also like, you just got to keep other people in check. And if you see people doing these things, like, it's more important to get that out there, and then everybody could figure out what to do with that information than to sit on it and have it fester and become this, infected wound over time. That's when it really all comes to a head. So hopefully we can all learn to just call out fucking bullshit when we see it.
Cool. Well, not cool, but yes.
Yeah.
Moving on. We did the best we could. It's a terrible situation.
There's a GameStop sale going on.
Yeah. It's hard to go on to anything else, but I did not want to end on that. So we got a GameStop sale to talk about. So we're going to be talking all about lore. If you haven't had a chance to play some of the first party Nintendo games that have some of that lore, like Splatoon and some of the Mario games, those are all on sale for a decent like $40 at GameStop. And then other places are matching this, right? And that's both physical and digital too, I think.
Yeah, so GameStop, they've got a lot of the first party Switch games for $40, and then Amazon and Walmart are both like competitive price matching and like bringing it down even by a couple bucks. So if you haven't picked up some of the big first party Nintendo games because they've been a little out of your price range, now is the time to do so.
That does it for the news section. We will take a quick break.
I'm still reeling from the transition between those two news items, but that's cool. We can move on.
Maybe that wasn't a good. Maybe it wasn't a good order.
It's all good. You live and learn.
What could have followed it? What could follow it though?
We're keeping this in the podcast so you guys know how hard we work to figure out good transitions.
But we'll take a break and then we'll talk all about lore in video games and in Nintendo games in particular. All right, so this week we are talking all about lore in video games and especially Nintendo games, since we're a Nintendo podcast. What do we mean by lore? You've probably heard the term if you're a gamer or you're into fiction, but lore is the preferred term in the video game world, it seems like, and it's sort of the backstory or the world building that goes into a game that, and that comes across through the game in particular, because in terms of what is shown to the player or what they can find. And I think video games in particular, when we can talk about this, have some unique ways to show lore as compared to books or movies, which, are limited by books. Obviously, it's just all written, so you write it and you put it in there. Mm-hmm. And there's more nuance to that, in terms of how you present it. There's the Lord of the Rings versus other more subtle type of backstory. Right?
Patrick's over here talking like, writing a novel is so easy. It's just words. Not like that.
But I think then, you have movies and I think, showing versus telling and all that stuff is it's true in like video games of like play instead of tell. And so we'll get into all that and much more. But before we do any specifics, anybody else is there anything I didn't explain very well there, or any big picture concepts of lore that you want to share? Or
I think of lore as like the depth of the world that you're in. So like you might be playing a game like, we'll talk about Nintendo games a little bit later, but I think of like Mario It's pretty simple. But if you want to discover more of the lore, you can, how like the worlds might be connected. But it's pretty shallow in the terms of like lore, to like discover it. Whereas like you go to, something like Skyrim, and like the complex relationship of all of the different races and the complex relationships between all of the different villages and their governing
And the
bodies
deities
and the groups and the deities, right? And the gods and the dragons and the assassins versus the Khajiit, all of that stuff. When I think of lore, I think of how much time can I spend to learn more about the world?
Yeah, I'd say it's like synonymous with like world building, right? Like I think like something with a rich lore has really rich world building, and that's, you know, within games, and that can be in movies and stuff as well, with, you know, set design and just how you fill out your world, right? But it's funny you mentioned Mario, Matt. It's Shigeru Miyamoto is like famously quite anti-story. I think that, you know, he is all gameplay focused, is very interested in his games speaking for themselves. And that's why there is no like canon or chronology to the Mario universe. You know what I mean?
No explanation of why.
Right. There's no Mushroom Kingdom Historia for that's been published for the Mario series. But that doesn't mean that there isn't good story building and world building in Nintendo games. And we'll definitely get into more examples of that as we go on.
And I think, since you brought him up, Miyamoto has also said, I think this was in I don't know if it was Game Informer or some interview years ago, where he kind of talked about them as being like all the Mario characters as being like actors. And he thinks of them kind of as like a troupe of actors. And so that each game, so they're kind of like friends. And that's why they, you know,
that's why they like golf together and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. They're just kind of like a troupe of actors that for each game plays a slightly different role.
I love
stereotype.
that.
I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, even Super Mario Brothers 3, it has a stage scene with the curtains.
Right.
Yeah, they're putting on a play.
Backstage.
Yeah.
And I like it. Someone pointed out it looks like the blocks are bolted or nailed.
Yeah, they've got little
on.
drop shadows behind them.
It's so cool. Yes.
Yeah. So, I think maybe if there's no other big picture thoughts to start with, then we'll talk about lore in Nintendo games first. And was it Matt? Was it you that added this into the notes? I love this scale you have devised of simple lore on one side and then increasing complexity to fuck you lore at the other side.
Yeah.
This is the terminology.
Right. Yeah, this is my own scale. The scale from not a lot of lore to most important lore. I got it as follows: increasing simple lore. Lore is not necessary to enjoy the game. Medium lore, where lore is somewhat necessary to enjoy the game. Complex lore, where it's you need to know the lore to truly enjoy the game. And then fuck you lore lore is absolutely required to make any sense of the story or game.
And even then you might be in trouble. So Matt, what are some examples of this?
Yeah, maybe you want to start it simple?
Yeah, start it simple.
Okay. We have Super Mario as we discussed. You know, princess gets kidnapped, you try and save her. You maybe collect stars.
Well, I don't know. As we've established now, they're a merry band of actors, and now I want to know what goes on behind the scenes. Like, that's opened up a huge can of worms for me on the Mario lore.
And this is like nuance and a question maybe that I'm asking y'all. I think there is a difference between story and lore. And the story of the game is maybe that the princess gets kidnapped and you have to save her. And the lore of the game is like, this is a world where these monsters exist and Bowser is in charge or something like that. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the canon, maybe.
Yeah.
You're saying like story is
the history, the things that aren't explained in the story that exist and that you can see or that you have to infer.
I think that's fair.
Using your example, the story is princess gets kidnapped.
Yeah.
Lore is answering, why does the princess get
Yeah,
kidnapped?
well, like what's
Yeah,
going
yeah.
on with all these talking mushrooms that you can jump on and turtles you can kick?
Yeah. Which the game doesn't really offer us any explanation for why these monsters deserve getting stomped on by Mario.
So would you say that maybe lore is the companion of setting?
Yeah, I think it's
Like, or is the explanation of setting?
yeah. It's like the back.
I'd
It's like
say so.
you
I
said,
think
the
so.
world building, the backstory is not critical.
Right.
And there are games like you've pointed out, Matt, where if you don't dive into the lore, you're just kind of like, who are like playing through Xenoblade without like following along closely, or like you're just like, what are all these bizarre creatures and like what is going on here? So
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted.
Another example of no, it's all good. Another example of simple lore, and David, feel free to interrupt me. I have F-Zero, and I'm using. You don't need to understand the lore to enjoy the game. F-Zero, at the end of the day, it's a racing game, but it does have lore and story to it, which is simply like aliens exist. People get rich. They develop a trade network with the aliens, and they make this race.
and Captain Falcon is a bounty hunter.
Yeah, he is a bounty hunter. And then the evil spirits who created the universe, the F-Zero universe, start putting their money towards the big bad in F-Zero's Captain Falcon. F-Zero.
Or
that's the name of the game.
Or press start to start the game. Cars go vroom vroom. End of story.
Yeah. It's very simple.
The F-Zero lore specifically, like as far as what's revealed within the games, reminds me of a lot of like fighting game lore.
Yes.
Right? Like when you play like a Tekken game, it's like you finish the arcade mode with any particular character, and then you get a little cutscene that shows like a little bit of their personality, a little bit of where they come from, a little bit of something like that, but absolutely non-crucial to understand. You could just press the kick and punch button in Tekken and be none the wiser, or you can watch these really beautifully made cutscenes at the end and stuff like that. Occasionally in F-Zero games, you would see little cutscenes that kind of show character stuff, but I think most of the lore from the F-Zero franchise has come from manga and anime that's been based within the video game franchise. That most people have not seen. I don't even know that it's been translated to English, those animes, you know? So it's definitely not necessary to understand, but it's something where if you know, then maybe the races have a little bit more weight to them.
Yeah, this is great because we're getting to some of the big concepts through this, but like that reminds me that like one thing that happens is lore sometimes is expanded upon outside of the game in stuff like you're talking about, like animes and stuff, or cartoons or graphic novels or whatever. But also, this doesn't happen now, but used to happen that the manual might have a lot of the lore. And I think about both of these games, Super Mario and F-Zero, as being games that are old enough that like the F-Zero manual had some, I think I had it, I don't really remember, but like has some of this stuff. And so, you know, in my old Mario games sometimes would have a little bit of an explanation in the manuals.
Well, yeah, games didn't used to have like opening cutscenes, right? Like if you wanted to know what the fuck was going on, you had to read like the couple paragraphs that came in the manual, and then you're like, oh, okay, now I know who I am, I know what I'm doing. Blah, blah, blah. That's why like emulating old games is such a minefield now, because nobody has any idea how to play them, because all the instructions are like in printed material that's rotted at this point.
I think isn't it the original Super Mario Brothers where they said the residents were turned into blocks?
Oh man, is that true?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there was a Nintendo Power like comic of the Super Mario series that showed Koopa like coming to the Mushroom Kingdom and turning everybody to stone. And I think that's where they like extrapolated that bit. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
I
So
just
people were people were worried that every time you'd hit a block, you were actually killing one of the residents of the Mushroom Kingdom.
I think the more you learn about Mario's lore and like the more you think about it, Mario is a murderer, y'all. Like
I would expect nothing less from the man who punches Yoshi in the back of the head in order for him to stick his tongue out. Look at the sprite. That's what's happening.
I like that you brought up the I like that you brought up the cartoons too, because I was ecstatic on Saturday mornings or Sunday mornings to watch the Mortal Kombat animated series, the Street Fighter animated series, Double Dragon, the Super Mario Brothers show. it just added so much more to the lore to me, which now apparently isn't even true. So
yeah.
It was all a lie.
That's how it's like lore can be canon or non-canon, right? Like what is decidedly canon is like, I feel like that's an internet thing, right? It's like people like have to know what is actually part of the real story. That's something that's been happening a lot recently. And then of course we'll get into it with Zelda, where they put out a whole book about that stuff.
Before we move on though, because we should, but like I think too, like you think about games like Mario, every game is new and the story and the lore kind of changes from game to game. So it's hard to have like a Mario lore that's canon or something. But Matt, we have interrupted your scale a lot here, so bring us to the next step.
No, it is all good. Yeah, this is all contextualized into video games. Like, do you need to know the lore to enjoy the gameplay? And as gameplay decreases, lore increases. So like medium lore, I say, is like Star Fox and Metroid.
Okay.
So this is like where it helps your experience to know the lore, but is not necessary in any facet.
Exactly. If you want to play Star Fox, you hit start, you should go pew-pews with your lasers, you kill this big face shooting triangles at you. That's fine.
But you're right. In Star Fox, like, it helps to know the stakes, right? Like the backstory of like the guy you're playing as, his dad was in this same mercenary group and he died. So Fox has like a big chip on his shoulder in order to like prove himself to his dead dad. You know what I mean? And like working with his dad's, like Peppy was in the old crew. So he's like working with dudes who knew his dad and shit like that. And a lot of this stuff is shown within the game. Like, I mean, Star Fox 64 was pretty revolutionary, like when it came out, just because of the breadth of the voice acting in the game. I actually like got kind of emotional the first time I like beat Star Fox 64 on the true ending. Whenever your dad, like, cause you defeat Andross and then it's exploding. And as it's like exploding, your dad's like, "I'm so proud of you, son." And like helps you out the like exploding corridor. And it was like, if I didn't know the backstory, like it wouldn't have affected me in that way. But I got like very emotional playing that game because of it when I was a kid.
Also, like James McLeod died because he couldn't do a barrel roll. And that's why Pepe is so insistent.
I like how you default to Pepe. But is that true? Did I didn't know that
some
about,
lore.
about
I'm
James
just
McLeod.
fucking around. I don't know. I'm just
okay.
trying to
I
make
was
a
like,
joke.
damn.
I'm doing
like,
bits.
Yeah, that's a good. We should declare that canon, man. That's really good.
What's next on the rungs of lore?
All right. Metroid is you play Samus, you battle against space pirates.
That's it.
So you have that listed here. Yeah. See, I feel like that's the story, right? Like, like it is being Samus and playing against space pirates. I don't know that I would count, Metroid under medium lore in a post Metroid Prime world. Does that make sense? Like Metroid Prime was like a lore machine, like that whole series. Like you had a whole visor that specifically was there to scan things and then give you a history about them, right? And like contextualize the stuff that you were seeing. And then in addition to that, you have a game like Other M, which delves into the backstory of Samus and kind of where she came from, which, don't get me wrong, a bunch of people hated because they hated what they did with the character. But for better or for worse, like, I think Metroid has become a series that has relied on its lore the more and more it goes.
Yeah, I feel like Metroid as a game and something, an interactive piece of art, I don't know whether to place it in medium or complex. From like a person who's unfamiliar with many parts of the Metroid lore and how it connects to the greater Metroid universe, I know that I can still enjoy Metroid. We have a whole sub-genre of games based on Metroid. And I enjoy Metroid at its base level with some basic understanding of, Samus's competition with Ridley and being the villain and Mother Brain and Metroids as a species and how they exist in that world. But all the other lore I don't know, but yet I can still enjoy the game with hopefully to the same capacity that the designers intended me to enjoy it as.
I think with Metroid in particular, like I would probably put it in the complex category because of the aforementioned like Metroid Prime isms that have happened because of the game, but also like unlike Mario or even really unlike Zelda, all of the Metroid games, including Prime and even including Federation Force, you can put in a chronological timeline. You know what I mean? Like it is the same character of Samus Aran across all the games, right? And there's like, you know, Prime 1, 2, and 3 take place before Metroid 1. And, you know, even at the beginning of Super Metroid, it doesn't say Super Metroid, it says Metroid 3, you know, because the Game Boy one was Metroid 2, you know what I mean? So it's like they've really rewarded people who have like played every game by expanding on the story as it goes, which maybe is why that game series has never done super well in the sales numbers because it's not as successful as like a Mario. But that's something I just really appreciate about the Metroid series is that like even when it's not necessarily to their advantage, they will always like slot it into the continuity, and I think that's pretty cool.
So the next rung is complex lore.
Yeah, where lore is necessarily to truly enjoy the game. And that's why I put Legend of Zelda. And I feel, David, I think I agree with you. I would move Metroid to this complex lore. And Legend of Zelda, where, you know, there's creation, the Triforce exists, and the hero, our hero Link, is constantly being, you know, reborn over and over again. And there's multiple timelines. And we have a whole book that Nintendo released about the multiple timelines and which Link is in which timeline. And in some regards,
you've got all the interesting races that they have in that game as well, which is like, to me, where the lore gets interesting, because it's not just the story of the Triforce being, you know, stolen by Ganon or whatever. It's like this world where there are fish people and also bird people and that kind of thing.
Celeste, you run a Zelda-themed podcast. Is the lore of the Legend of Zelda series something that draws you in? Is that like kind of what makes you a super fan of this series?
Absolutely. I love the motivation. It just keeps getting interesting. It keeps grabbing my attention completely. I want to know why, and I'm someone who will talk to every NPC in a game. I am probably the most boring human being to watch playing a video game because I'm going to talk to them multiple times to see if they say something different as well. I will talk to them after different events to see if they'll say something different. And it's kind of like real life, where I think everybody has a story, and you can just be on public transportation, you can be at the store. You don't know what somebody's going through that day. You don't know what their goals are, what their hopes, their fears are. And Zelda does that so beautifully, especially with I'm sure, as most people know, the reason Link is called Link is because he's a link between the player and the game. Of course, you can call him whatever you want, as we've seen people do in the games.
My dude. Yeah.
One of my friends calls him bro. So that I love it. And as a kid, that's something else, experiencing games as a child versus an adult. The story is engaging, but especially with games like Majora's Mask, as an adult versus when I was a preteen playing it, there are very dark themes that I can see resonate in the real world in games like Majora's Mask. And I thought it was really cool how you could show the Happy Mask salesman the different masks you acquire, and he'll give you a snippet about the emotions that are emanating from those masks. Like if you show him the mask from the dancer, I cannot remember his name. He was the one who would teach the twins how to dance. He would say, oh, this mask is full of the love and pride a teacher has for a dedicated student. It was very sweet. It was very emotional. And then it keeps changing. They keep throwing curveballs for us, like Matthew wrote down. I just have to enjoy it for what it is. But it's absolutely beautiful. What is the motivation? And seeing Zelda struggle in Breath of the Wild, that hits home, especially if you reach a point in your life where you have an existential crisis. What am I doing? Why is nothing working out like I planned? And I love that you guys also brought up some things about how we acquire the lore, but that might be for a little bit later
Yeah.
after
Yeah,
we
maybe
talk about the
Maybe we can
different
talk about that
levels.
next after
Sure,
we hear
sure.
about that.
Oh, he has to talk about the final tier.
Yeah,
That's
the
the
final
funniest
tier.
one.
We'll get to that for sure. So something, but before we get to that, just something I appreciate about Zelda lore is that like it kind of toes the line between like simple and complex, I think, because it does have a like built into the story the fact that the hero is reborn over and over again. So the hero is both like a different person every time you play, for every Zelda game you play, and kind of the same spirit, right? Like every time you play. So it's
Yes.
if you want to look deep into it, you get a lot out of it because of the breadth of what they've built with the lore. Or if you just want to play it as it is, you could just be like, oh, it's some guy named Link saving some girl named Zelda, right? But it's like, but at the end of the day, it's like, I think really the game that cemented it for me, and this is a game that I might actually only truly love because of what it did for the lore, is Skyward Sword. You know, like I thought Skyward Sword was a fun game as well. I liked the Wii Motion Plus motion controls for that game. A lot of people really didn't, but for me, the star of that game was the story, right? And it was like, cause it was like it's the Metroid Prime of the Zelda universe. It's like the origin story of everything. And like, not only do you see the first Link and Zelda, but you also see like the birth of this evil that has eventually turned into Ganondorf. That starts as what I think it's Demise is what is called in that game. And,
Yes.
and just like the way that it set up everything, it like recontextualized every Zelda game for me, you know, that. And then another big takeaway for me is like the lore that was built out of Ocarina of Time with the three goddesses, right? Like that's the Silmarillion of the Zelda universe, is like the kind of origin story of, Nairu and Feor and I forget all their names, but that as a kid, like, is what really drew me in, you know, to the point where when I was in middle school, I was writing like Zelda fan fiction, and I came up with all these like backstories with the characters and stuff like that. And maybe that's something we talk about in a little bit, but like fan created like lore and stuff like that. Like where does that stand in? But yeah, I think I assume you've read Hyrule Historia, Celeste.
Yeah, the Zelda Bible.
Yeah, exactly.
and the Zelda Encyclopedia, Creating a Champion. I just need the red book, the Artifacts book. That's the only one I
Right. Yeah. We'll go fund me.
Arts and,
yeah.
Oh, I can get it. I just haven't yet.
All right,
Yeah.
Matt, bring this scale to its natural conclusion.
Well, okay. To its natural conclusion, we went from simple to medium to complex to the highest form of lore is what I call fuck you lore. This is where a game where lore is absolutely required to make any sense of the series or game. And part of one game that I categorize as fuck you lore is Xenoblade, a game that I love so much, and I just completed Definitive Edition. It's a game that you have to focus on the cutscenes, and you have to watch how the characters interact with each other, or as Celeste was saying, you know, talk to the NPCs to learn more about why these characters are making choices. Why do they want revenge? Where does the Monado come from? And what is a Monado? And all of that stuff. And also with Xenoblade, I've never played this, but I assume Fire Emblem is a fuck you lore game.
It is and isn't, because it's like, you know, because you can just play the game. I mean, and I'm talking specifically about Three Houses here, because that's the Fire Emblem game I've put the most time into. But like Three Houses is like chock full of the shit. You know what I mean? Like it's got Skyrim level of books that you can read. You know what I mean? That like tell you all these details about the centuries that battles are going down and shit like that. But if you want, you can really just play the battles. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you could skip all that shit. But like Three Houses in particular, like half of the game is going around and talking to students and figuring out like what's going on in people's heads and celebrating holidays that are made up for this universe and stuff like that. Right. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's definitely not necessary, but like in order to get the most out of it, like it's required. Yeah.
And I think it's like the framework you provided us with, Matt, is like it's like one way to look at it. and I think maybe another way to look at lore in games too is like, does the game hit you over the head with lore, or does it leave like, or do you have to kind of suss it out on your own? And the big like two sides of this that you see commonly are Skyrim, like you talked about, where everybody you talk to, like like there's NPCs that have all kinds of things. They do have daily schedules, you can follow them around, and then like there's books you can read, like Matt or David was saying, and then the game like Dark Souls or something where the lore is hidden, it's more mysterious, it's kind of like you pick up on small details of it, right?
I don't know that there's a difference in the kinds of lore there as it is a difference in the delivery method,
right? And that's kind of what I'm getting at, I guess. And well, there is a difference in terms of the volume available to the player, right? Like,
sure.
But yes, they might both have a lot of lore, and I think that's that's like another framework to think about too, right? Like, does the game present you with lots of ways to engage with the lore, or do you have to kind of seek out those ways to engage with the lore?
Before we get into the different ways that you can express lore,
yeah,
I just want to say one game that you have to bring up when you're talking about fuck you lore is Kingdom Hearts, right? Like Kingdom fucking Hearts. Like if you didn't play like the mobile spin-off game or like the DS game, like you don't have the full story. You know what I mean? Like they straight up reference shit in like the mainline games that are from these tiny spin-offs. And if you haven't played those games, you're just lost. Right. And you just kind of have to go along for the ride. So I just wanted to mention that before we moved on, because I feel like Kingdom Hearts is the worst, the worst at that. You know what I mean?
When you start Kingdom Hearts, you know, normally when you start a game, there's options at the main menu, which is start game, options, and then extras. But in Kingdom Hearts 3, there's an additional option, which is story, which opens a different menu, which has a series of Square Enix created cutscenes that brings you up to speed of the Kingdom Hearts universe between all of those mobile games and all of the 3DS games before you play 3. It's like 25, 30 minutes.
And that's not even mentioning like the built-in lore that comes with when you cross over Square owned universes like Final Fantasy with pre-existing universes in the Disney franchises, right? It's like you have to know the story of Toy Story and Hercules and Pirates of the Caribbean, as well as knowing the story of Final Fantasy VII and know who Sephiroth is and Cloud and all this shit. You know what I mean? So it's like, I feel like that's the most complicated video game lore of all time is going to be Kingdom Hearts.
I agree with that.
In the interest of kind of saving time, we can maybe power through some of these last topics, but I did want to talk about some of the different ways that games can express lore and maybe use some Nintendo games as some discussion for this, but like the actual physical backgrounds and settings of games. And I know that like Splatoon does this a little bit and some other, lots of games do this. I think about like, you know, Castlevania, the original one, how Dracula's castle is looming in the background and kind of provides that sort of
Halo.
Yeah.
Halo with like the actual Halo ring that you're seeing in front of you. Yeah.
And there's plenty more examples, but also like NPCs, like Celeste was talking about. If you want to, in certain games, you can talk to every NPC, and in some games they'll tell you different things depending on the situation. And that's like an option for somebody that maybe wants to know more about a world versus somebody that just wants to speed run through a game can ignore all that. And then actual items you can read in a game, like in Skyrim, you can read full books. And like you said, in Fire Emblem, they have that too. But also there's
I just want to interrupt,
please,
about the books in Skyrim. Is I was listening to this podcast where it's like the two hosts like interview video game characters, and like the guest that they'll have on each time like pretends to be a certain character from a video game. And one of the ones I listened to was a Skyrim book publisher. And it's like a guy whose like entire job is to like publish 5-page books. And just talking about like the printing press and binding. Anyway, I thought that was fun.
And I think this is kind of a grouping of things, but there's unlockable items or like unlockable concept art or like collectibles where there's a short little bit of text or an audio plays. Like I think BioShock does that. Lots of games do that, but like where you can
that was a big fad in like the late 2000s. Yeah.
And those are sort of optional ways that a player can engage in the lore of a world but they don't have to, right? And then I think it's cool when a game can express lore through gameplay. And what does that mean exactly? I don't know, but I think it's like, do y'all have any thoughts on this? I was kind of trying to think about this and insert it, but I think this is where games maybe can uniquely do this, is the actual actions you're taking are, express the world. Like, I don't know about maybe like a game like Journey or something.
I think,
Journey is a great example.
Yeah. I would say walking
Mhm.
simulators. Absolutely. I mean, that's the whole point. Like, everybody's gone to the Rapture. I don't know if you guys have played that one where you see these snippets of these ghost-like people and you have to piece together their conversations to understand, okay, who is this person? What are they talking about? And it's not always necessarily in order. That can complicate things with gameplay if it's more open world than linear. And you're like, okay, well, who is this person and what's their relationship to this character?
Yeah.
Like a puzzle.
That's a good.
Myst is like that too. Another game that uses gameplay to tell its story is Binding of Isaac. And I've talked about this on the podcast before, but like, the game has like little tiny cutscenes in between the floors that you go through, but really the story is told through the items and upgrades that you receive as you go, right? Be it like a little piece of, religious iconography or whatever that kind of shows that you're raised in a religious household, or you pick up a piece of shit that like shows that the character is like born and raised in an environment where he's been abandoned and he's not being taken care of in the appropriate way. So it's like little things like that. Like the story is totally told through the progression of the character throughout the game.
And then I think there's that whole lore outside of the game category in terms of books, comics, TV shows, fan created lore, like you were talking about, or fan fiction and expanding the universe and that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's lots of Halo novels, there's BioShock novels, there's Myst novels, which I've read all of those. I'm really invested in that world.
Splatoon manga, right?
Yeah, there's a Splatoon manga, and then not only that, like Splatoon and ARMS, like things that you have listed on here, like have pretty deep world building, but they aren't really expressed in the game. A lot of the stuff that you learn about the ARMS and Splatoon universes, you can find through like promotional images and like tweets that like Nintendo will put out that have little bits of details in the background. That's like, it's really about like community led storytelling. It's like people find these things and then post them in subreddits or forums and like kind of discuss like what this means for the gravity of the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like ARMS in particular, and it is like Splatoon does this too, right? Where you can unlock this art, but like the art isn't like give you a very clear indication. It's like in ARMS, it's like case file where you can kind of see, an older Springman, and you have to realize, oh, that's not the same Springman. Springman is a title, and this is the current Springman, right? And stuff like that. That
the Goopy Fighter, I forget what he's called, but he's Helix, like a proto ARMS. Yeah, Helix is kind of like the initial like lab experiment that created the ARMS fighters. Yeah. So it's other games do this kind of stuff too, but those are great Nintendo examples. Surprisingly, Kirby is another one as well. Kirby has a pretty deep lore, but you wouldn't know it from playing the games.
Huh.
Cool. I think we've talked a lot about lore, but does anybody want to bring it home with anything we didn't get to, or any way to tie some of this together, or any feelings about lore?
Resident Evil.
Yeah, Resident Evil is complicated.
I think this is hilarious. I know there's that suspension of disbelief with video games, movies, and entertainment, but I don't know that many people in real life who write diaries or journals religiously. So when you think about the plethora of very sophisticated writing in Resident Evil, all of these lay people writing diaries. I mean, it's not impossible, but just the amount of people journaling their experiences, that always tickles me.
Yeah. When you were talking about the like audio clips that you can hear like in BioShock, it's like, are all these people really just walking around with giant reel-to-reel tape recorders like recording their thoughts?
Yeah.
It's pretty silly, but it's a good way to tell a story.
Yeah, it's in a lot of games too, where like, somebody will be recording something and then something happens and they're like, and that's how they died or something. Like so many people in video games are recording their own deaths.
I like lore, but bits, I'm going to say a bit. as I play 51 worldwide classics, I understand that I'm playing toy tennis and toy hockey,
Yeah.
and I'm playing checkers, but I need to know, why are these games together and why they are classics. Nintendo, give us some deep lore for Clubhouse Games 51 worldwide classics.
Here's your lore. Here's your lore. The developers of that game were working on DLC for Super Mario Party, got frustrated with the process, and decided to launch a bunch of. I don't know what I'm saying, but you get the idea.
There is weird lore in that game, though, of those little toy figures, and I want to know their relationships and understand like.
Guys, we are going too deep in this. There is no lore to Clubhouse Games 51 Worldwide Classic.
No, there has to be.
But he's right. Every time I play, after I accomplish something, it'll say so-and-so has landed. And I'm thinking, why do I care about so-and-so? I just want to play Mancala for the 50th time.
That's true. I do want that globe to stop beeping at me.
Exactly. If F-Zero can have a story other than this is just a race, and F-Zero, which is a deep lore, it has beings that created the universe who want to destroy the universe, then 51 Clubhouse Games, 51 Worldwide Classics.
Oh my God.
Who created Clubhouse Games 51
Okay,
Worldwide
what
Classics?
you're saying is we need a game where 9-Man Morris is a bounty hunter going from world to world.
That will help us explain everything, yes.
Please write this fan fiction.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, we didn't talk about Smash at all. Smash has kind of got lore with the toys, right? Like similarly to Clubhouse Games 51.
Yeah.
The trophies kind of come to life. But I think that just to kind of wrap things up, like I think that we're spoiled as gamers when we're talking about lore. I think that video games are like such a unique and special medium for telling stories. And I think that you can get, as a storyteller, you can get so much more creative in the ways that you want your story to be told. You were talking about this at the top, Patrick, with like, even in movies, like show, don't tell, right? Like, I think the best movies that really work are the movies that can get across like major concepts and emotions without the characters having to be like, I'm sad now. You know, it's like you see through the mise en scène and the setting and what has happened so far in the film, you understand things without them having to be spelled out to you. And I think that video games take that to an entirely different level. And I think because there are so many different ways, as we've talked about here, to really spread lore and world building within a game, I think it makes it so like fulfilling. Like when you seek this stuff out and you finally figure out like, oh, this character was this, but I only knew that because I actually did the fucking work and like read all these clues and like maybe went on a forum and like did some fan speculation or whatever that led us to this conclusion. Like, it's such a unique and creative way to tell a story. And I don't think we're like anywhere close to done figuring out the ways that you can tell stories in video games. And that's what I think that movies could learn from this. I think books could learn from this. Now that we're in like an online environment with everything in life, like I think that we can evolve the ways that lots of different mediums tell stories, and they can learn a lot from video games in this regard.
Nice. I think that should be our closing comment.
I'm here to wrap it up, boys. That's what I want. No, I'm just kidding.
Nice wrap up. Not the 51 Clubhouse Worldwide. But we'll move on then. Yeah, so that's a great topic on lore. We could always talk more about these things, but we will take a break and then tell you all about the video games that we have all been playing recently. Over the last week or so, in terms of me, Patrick, the games I've been playing some more Rayman Legends. I think I picked that back up. I'm gonna try to see the credits roll on that game soon. Hopefully, I like it. It's nice varied platformer. And then my kid wanted to start playing Captain Toad again, Treasure Tracker. So we started that, and very fortunately, this time he didn't want to just start over, so we actually spent a lot of time going back and getting all the things we missed, and which is like, oh,
really unpacking the lore on that game.
Yeah, we're really unpacking the lore together to get all the extra hidden gems. And then we started playing through New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe together, which I have beaten on my own, but not with him. Now that he's been playing so much Mario Maker, I had the idea that we could play that, and he's super into it. But my criticisms of that game stand that doesn't need a life system. He runs out of lives and has to get continues, and it's frustrating because like I just want him to be able to come back in the middle of a level instead of me having to die so that he can come back. But it's a great game and it's fun to play through again. And that Mario lore, gotta love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about you? Somebody else?
Speaking of lore, I finished Xenoblade Definitive Edition.
Congratulations.
And then played through Future Connected, and that was great.
Right.
So it was super fun. It made me want to pick up Xenoblade 2.
Oh no!
Yeah, but I'm
You're
not
stuck in a loop, Matt.
Oh shit! It must reset. Well, and also what I just want to say right now is, if you want to write the 51 Worldwide Classics fan fiction, please reach out to me on Instagram.
You need a ghostwriter.
Some other games I've been playing. I started playing Detroit Become Human. Have any of you played like Heavy Rain or Indigo Prophecy, Fahrenheit? They're quantum games.
No, Patrick and I don't like unnecessary shower scenes, Matt.
No. Well, I do. I love shower scenes. It makes me feel clean. I'm playing it, but I'm playing it with my partner, and her and I are playing it together. So it's like an interactive narrative, and so you make choices and stuff. So like we have gotten to arguments of like how we're going to respond to it, but there's a timer that decreases, and it gives you like 15 seconds to respond. So it's like, how do you respond to this question? And it's like angrily, remorse, directly, or empathetically. And I'm like, directly. She's like, no, empathetically. And then we argue for a little bit, and we make a choice, and one of us will win. And it just makes me just really enjoy those type of games that they're creating, and the interactive story and the gameplay, and how it kind of blends all those, and how like it's a one-player game, but it's also a really fun to be a two-player experience.
That's cool.
I'll go next. I've been playing quite a bit, so I'll go through these pretty quick. I beat Star Wars Racer. That game is still just as fun as it was when it was on N64. So I recommend that. Duke Nukem 3D World Tour. I've been playing a little bit of that remake. That game is way harder than I remember it being. Even playing on easy, I'm dying quite a bit. So we'll see if I go back to that one. I did play some DLC Spirit Battles in Smash, just because I was kind of riding the high of the hype on Smash. So I've been trying to go back to the Spirit board, maybe, as kind of like something that I play for just little pick up and play sessions of a game. So I've been doing that. I played your copy of Jackbox Party Pack 3, Matt. So thanks for that. I don't know if you're aware of that, but yeah, that game was a lot of fun.
Which ones did you play?
We played 3. We did Quiplash. We did the horror trivia, like the haunted house trivia thing, which I liked. And then the t-shirt game, which I did not like. I thought that was pretty pointless. Also, but
I love TKO.
Yeah, I know a lot of people like it. I didn't like it. Also, I'm like burned because like I didn't submit my picture in time twice. So like my shirts never showed up on the screen. I was like, what's the point? But I understand that's my own fault. I did play the Xenoblade Chronicles Tetris 99 Maximus Cup, and I unlocked that skin for those who are wondering. Yeah. So that's good. Was playing a little bit of I'm forgetting the gentleman's names, but the Rise of the Forgotten Levels Redux Super Mario Maker World. I played a little bit.
Don
of that
Enriquez.
Today. Yeah, that's right, Don Enriquez. So thanks for that, Don. He's got links for that in our Facebook group. That's very fun, very hard at times, and also pretty easy at times. Make those levels harder, Don. And then other than Clubhouse Games 51 by Classics, the new game that I've been playing this week is a bizarre game on the eShop that I really recommend called Infini. Have you guys heard of this game?
No.
Nope.
No.
So I opened up my eShop the other day, and it was the day this game came out, and I didn't realize it, but it was listed as free on the eShop. So I downloaded it. I was like, cool, free game. Turns out if you own a couple other games by this publisher, you get the game for free. And some of those games had also been released for free in the past. So like, I think Echo is one of them. and a couple other games as well. But so I picked up this game, Infinity, and it looks so weird. It's kind of got this strange MS Paint aesthetic, and the whole thing plays like a incredible acid trip. And it's just this bizarre setting. You play as somebody named Hope, and you befriend like a fox. And you befriend time and war and like all these concepts. And it's about like looking within yourself to the infinity of your being to discover who you are in the world. But it's played as this kind of strange puzzle game that's really difficult to explain. It's basically like Pac-Man, or a few other games do this. Towerfall does this as well, where if you go off one side of the screen, you pop up on the other side of the screen. I guess Asteroids does that too. So it uses this concept and then this kind of mechanic of being able to zoom out of the levels. And as you zoom out, certain things on the edge will disappear, which allows you to loop over to the other side of the screen. It's just this really brain-breaking puzzle game that has this like surprisingly deep story with these really interesting characters. And if you've experimented with psychedelic drugs at all, you will enjoy this game. So I really recommend it in that regard. And I think it was free when I got it because of that promotion, but it's only like $6. And then there's like a DLC for it, which I bought, which is like only $1. And I think all the proceeds benefit refugees. So it's definitely worth checking out this game. If you're looking for something just batshit insane and bizarre on the Switch, can't do much worse than Infinity. So that would be my recommendation. What about you, Celeste? You been playing anything cool this weekend?
Well, I looked up Infinity because when you said MS Paint, that caught my attention for a video game. And the dude kind of looks like one of those creatures from Fantastic Planet, that 1970s.
Yeah, it's got Fantastic Planet vibes and Salad Fingers vibes as well, if you're familiar.
David Lynch. Well, I've been playing, and I do not want to be chastised because I was listening to another episode where if you just call it Clubhouse Games, it's
you could call it
blasphemy. It's Clubhouse Games 51 worldwide classics. I was trying to remember
it's the full name.
I've been playing that in my free time. I'm trying to learn some different card games because in real life I really just know Go Fish and bullshit. And I've been playing Animal Crossing as often as possible. I'm so happy they added diving like they had a New Leaf. So excited for that. I really do love how they're pacing things out though, and each month we'll have something new. I love that. And I think it's amazing that the original one on GameCube kept me captivated for as long as it did when you compare the amount of things to do in that one compared to the newer titles. Yeah. I mean, you just had your village back then. You didn't have shops and people couldn't really visit you unless you had a GameCube card. And I'm 16.
You did have Lloyd's, though.
Yes. You had a little island if you had a Game Boy Advance as well. Now, I'm 16 years behind on this game, but I finally picked up Siberia 2.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if any of you guys remember that game. It's pretty cool.
I do, but I've never played it. Isn't there a third one coming?
There's a third one out. It came out in 2017, and I believe they're working on a fourth one. That's, I want to talk about lore, but that's a pretty cool one. It's beautiful. Music is beautiful. And on the weekends, whenever I can play a game that stresses me out, and I don't have to be up at 5 a.m, I like to play A Plague Tale. I like to take a few chapters at a time. I don't know if any of you guys have played that one.
I haven't.
I haven't, but I'm familiar.
It's beautiful. If you like stealth missions, it's absolutely your game. If you do not like stealth missions, if you do not like Beyond Good and Evil, do not play A Plague Tale.
Very cool.
Oh, I have to say as well, I forgot to say, I did also get the Genesis Mini the other day, so I'm playing some Genesis games. Yeah. Someone posted it in the Facebook group, and I was like, I'm not going to buy that. And then like 5 minutes later, I bought it. It was pretty bad.
Well, I think that does it for this episode number 73. Thank you so much, Celeste, for coming on and talking to us all about lore. Appreciate that.
Oh, thank you for having me. Congratulations on 73 episodes. That's a great milestone. That's great.
It's a milestone.
Thank you.
I think
thanks
so.
to you.
Yeah. Hey, before we end it, Celeste, where you do a podcast, some other stuff, where can people find you?
Well, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Fairy Crypt. So if you like food, you like cats, you like video games, follow me there. I'd be happy to meet up with you guys virtually and discuss our passions.
And where can people find your podcast?
It's at anotherzeldapodcast.com. It's pretty much anywhere there are podcast hosts. David Geisler is the co-creator, co-founder, and Kate May is the other co-host. And we also have articles on our website if you want to take some deep dives into Zelda theories.
Nice.
We gotta
Into that Zelda lore.
we gotta get our website going.
Well,
that's a multi-year project that's come to a halt.
Thanks to Corduroy for doing our music. Sorry to Chris McKeever, we did not play Disney's Tsum Tsum Festival this week. If you want to find me, Patrick, online, I am PDYX most places.
You can find me on Twitter, Matthew, MATHYOU.
I'm pretty much everywhere on the internet at Monolith Fiji. And if you're interested in finding our podcast on social media, we are at Super Switch Headz on Instagram and Facebook, at Switch Headz on Twitter. We've got the Facebook group, which is Switch Headz, all caps. That thing is popping off. We're at almost 500 members, I think. I don't know. Maybe I just made that up. But we've got a lot of people in it, and it's always a good place to go. We also have our Discord, which I urge you to join because it is also a hotbed of activity. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to today's episode on lore. I had a great time. Again, thank you, Celeste. I feel like we could talk about this forever, and I think it would be cool in the future to do episodes specific about specific games lores, because we could fill a whole 10 hours on Zelda lore alone. So, which we will do. But we got a great episode for you guys next week, so make sure you stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much once again for listening. Stay safe out there. Wash your hands. Keep fighting the good fight. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.